All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Borrelli. I'm the president of CAS currently, and welcome to our observatory. Are there any new members or people who've never been here before? Raise your hand up and introduce yourselves. Oh, yeah, you've been here, and I know you've been here observing. All right. If not, I hope we'll have more than just the great presentations scheduled by Rocky and Karl, and maybe we'll get a somewhat of a repeat, whether it's good or bad or lower, of the amazing aurora we had here last night. Jim was here, Karl, and it was, I don't know what to say. What would you guys, what's an adjective you'd use, Jim?
Wow.
Wow. Karl?
I would say it was all inspiring.
It's all inspiring. Danny's not here, but he was pretty much enjoying it. All right, so later on, everyone stick around. It gets dark around 8:30 or so, which is when we started seeing things last night. Tonight we have two great presentations, one by Rocky on lunar observing and by Karl on how to sketch the things as he's observing through his telescope, because he absolutely refuses to do astrophotography. All right, Rocky, the floor is yours. No, I was going to say you can introduce it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, talk about it a little.
Well, I know Paul does a large telescope. But I also know him because he's real active in the observing programs, and he has. I knew he had Lunar Evolution and Lunar 1, but he's also got Lunar 2, and that Lunar 2 is the hardest. And I have a feeling some of these sketches we see are some that he did for Lunar 2. Anyway, appreciate you telling us about it.
Guys, thanks for having me here. Raise it up a little more. So my name is Karl Schultz. I'm just going to tell you a little bit kind of what my experience is in astronomy and my experience in sketching and some things I've learned over the short time I've been doing it. So hopefully.
Actually, let's tell you, your sketches remind me a lot of earlier with the Galileo. Serious.
Well,
that's
that's very high praise. Just to start, why would you want to sketch anything, the moon or otherwise? I think if you pick up a puzzle off a bookshelf, you look at, you see a horse in a field. Well, actually start putting that puzzle together, you see a lot more details. It's the exact same thing with sketching. The more you look at it, the more you see. And if you wait long enough, you'll appreciate the difference in seeing. Seeing is how clear or turbulent the air is. And as you're looking through the eyepiece, you'll notice that out of 10 seconds or maybe a few seconds are very clear, a few seconds are very lousy, but you'll notice those second to second variations, and that's really the only way to do is sit there and stare at it for a long time. It's pretty much free to do sketching, although you can spend a little bit of money if you want to get better pencils, but it's still really, really cheap. And it records what you saw at a moment of time, whether that's good, bad, or in between. You get to know kind of what you saw at that moment. Did you see this small crater? Did you miss this small crater? And you can check your progress. If you go back and sketch the same thing again a year later, you'll notice how you've improved. And it's a really kind of a fast process. It usually just takes 5 or 10 minutes or an hour to sketch something. And anytime you do it in practice, you'll get better at it. So let's see. So my artistic experience is pretty limited. I did take some art classes in elementary school. I took a class in high school, and that's about it. After that, I did chemistry, math, and German in college. And I was a molecular biologist and did cloning as a grad student. And then I got an MD, so I really don't have any experience in art besides elementary school. So I guess I'm just trying to tell you can do it too. My astronomical experience, I started in 2019 with what I thought then was a really expensive telescope. I since learned it was not a very expensive telescope. It was on the world's worst mount and tripod combination. It was very, very wobbly. Most of the things I've done since then have been on a 10-inch Dobsonian, although I also have an 80 millimeter solar refractor that does modify for nighttime work. And I've always been, as Michael said, I've always been an all manual, all visual guy. The unfortunate thing about all these scopes is there's no tracking. That's the only thing I don't like, because it's going to move over time. If you look at the moon, it's after 5 or 10 seconds, it's going to start to move out of the view. You have to nudge the scope. So I've done about 2,500 observations over just over 150 sessions, and I just got a brand new, to me at least, 16-inch Starmaster Dobsonian, which I was excited about. Used that last night. And I have you done Lunar 1, 2, and 3, and I've got the observer pen as well. And right now working on the Herschel 400, I'm 2/3 done, just past 2/3 done. So that's my experience level. These are my first sketches I could find from 2020. So I took a piece of printer paper, a wooden clipboard, and a number 2 pencil from my desk and walked outside. And this is what I got. So you can see they're pretty crude. They're not very great. And there's some information missing on the sketch as far as the time, date, clip use, all that sort of thing. But I would like to point out that the main idea is still conveyed. This one here is supposed to show the moon progressing over time. And you can see that indeed, you can see the moon is getting brighter and it's moving through the star field. So I did convey something I was trying to convey with the sketch, even though it's pretty limited. And still had a lot of fun doing it. So it's after about a year of practice, and these pictures are a little bit small up here on the screen. It got a good bit better. This is Crater Perry. I've sketched over 3 hours, 3 sketches over 3 hours. So every hour I did a new sketch. Each sketch took about 15, 30 minutes. And so you can see, you can watch the details change over time. The one thing I was really proud of this, you can see this shadow here. There's actually 3 shadows there. And in the middle sketch, there's only 2 shadows. At the end, there's only 1 shadow because the sun is rising over the crater. So the appearance changes. Again, that's something that you only see. You're going to actually look there and observe and pay attention because you won't notice if you just glance at it. The other thing I was going to point out is this is actually a really small thing we're looking at. I put it on a big piece of paper, but it's a couple millimeters square in the eyepiece. It is a very small target. So that is something you got to keep in mind as you're drawing. And let's see. The other thing I'd like to say is that pictures here from the bottom, the objects more or less keep the same spatial relations. So after time, you were kind of able to keep the objects in the same field of view. Like they're not all wonky as you go through the sketches. So here's my first sketch of Tycho. I was trying to show that the rays, how bright it was at midday. And this is after a year or 2 practice. I think that looks a lot better. Let's see. Here's a full moon sketch. This is for Lunar 1 on the left. That's for Lunar 2 on the right. So I think the Lunar 1 sketches are terrible. But the Lunar 2 sketch, I think, got a little bit better. There's more detail. And I will say, if you're trying to draw the full moon, that's actually the hardest thing, at least in my opinion, to draw. There's just so many details, and you either draw them all or you kind of look at the small little craters and say, okay, that's up in here in an hour. That's all I got. So the full moon's the hardest thing to sketch for sure. This is for the lunar evolution or Lunar 3 sketches. So on the left is the Apollo 12 and 14 sites. On the right's Apollo 15. And you can see I've kind of changed over time here. This one on the left, I started off with shading the whole thing and then kind of smearing it in because there are areas on the moon of very high albedo. Albedo is how bright or how reflective it is. So there's areas that are very, very bright, even brighter than the background, and much brighter than the sea. So if you don't have a background of gray, you can't make it any brighter. So there's this, you see the C-shaped area here, kind of clear area here, and this clear area here. You kind of use your erasure, make some lighter areas to do that. So you can see over time the sketches got better. These take about 30 minutes to an hour, probably to sketch, something like that. And then I went through Adobe and put in the labels. But so again, I'm no master, but I'm going to tell you what I started with. So like I said, it was just stuff I had laying around the house. I eventually upgraded some graphite pencils, so that helps out some pencils with hardness to make it darker and lighter lines. I upgraded really fancy paper for 50 cents a piece of paper, and a very fancy red light for $10. So it's overall, 20, 30 bucks maybe. I got a nice clipboard here that keeps my stuff dry. It's got a little dry box in it that keeps everything dry from getting wet in the night. And that's it. That's the equipment I have for sketching. It's not very complicated. This is the gear I actually use most of the time. So I have the green clipboard there and the pencil box and the iPad to look at all the different structures and know the names. And then the telescope is a 10-inch, like I said, and then there's a light strapped to the finder scope you can't really see from this far away. An observing stool, and that's really it. So it's a pretty simple rig. I guess one trick I did learn from a friend online is the sandpaper for the hard pencils. The really hard pencils are hard to sharpen with a regular pencil sharpener. So if you kind of grind them with a sandpaper, that helps to keep a sharp tip, and a sharp tip is helpful to sketch overall. One thing that someone told me online is good advice, I think, is to start with sketching a picture from a book or from the internet. because sitting at your kitchen table with a piece of paper is a lot easier than squatting over your telescope in a red light, swatting mosquitoes, nudging your scope. So if you start with something of a book, you can really practice and have a little time to draw without some of those difficulties of drawing from the eyepiece. I have looked at a couple of web presentations and videos on sketching. It's been kind of plus or minus, and people online have been really helpful. You just ask for advice. What are you doing? How do you do it? That's been helpful as well. I mentioned that I do shade the background before I start, again, to make the lighter areas of the moon pop out. And then really the biggest thing is practice. I mean, I think if you do this once or twice, it'll be difficult, but if you continually do it every couple of months, you'll get better like anything else. And that's kind of fun to watch. For my scope, I like to use a 6mm eyepiece most of the time, which is just over 200x. And 9 times out of 10, I can use that scope with RCing here from my house. Like I said, any 10 seconds, there's probably 7 or 8 that are good, 1 or 2 that's excellent, or 1 or 2 that are lousy and look like I'm looking through a really deep swimming pool. So that's most of the nights. If I can't see more than 10 seconds, I do something else. That's just not enough to do anything with. I like, if I can get away with it, the 4.5mm eyepiece, which is just under 300x. I think some people would say that may be too much. I disagree. If it's a clear night, if it's steady seeing, 300x is a lot better. I mean, you just get to see a lot more detail. But the field of view starts to shrink, so you're nudging that scope. If the seeing's bad, you can forget about it. So I usually try it most nights, and most nights I put it away. But in fall, there was a really nice night where really, really clear and really steady seeing, and felt like I was flying over the moon as through that big eyepiece. So that's what I like to use. So this is through the 6x or through the 6mm eyepiece. This is kind of what I would see. It's 2/3 or so of the moon. So Crater Perry's there in the very center. That drawing we put on a piece of paper was actually, that big in the eyepiece. It's a tiny little thing you're sketching. So you're really blowing that up quite a bit. Oh, this is my high-tech post-processing system. So I used to put it in my computer to scan it. That really wasn't terribly great. So I got all the lights in the house and kind of crammed it around my kitchen counter. Open up all the windows, wait for a sunny day, take my 7-year-old cell phone, put it over there and take a picture. It's better than the scanner, and probably saying better than this still, but this is the system I have. Again, you can see a lot of this is kind of a low cost. This is a budget sort of plan, but it does work pretty well. Oh, and then Adobe, I'll go back and label it. So what else is out there? What else people do? This is for my friend Alex in Australia. He's a really good artist. He actually draws other things besides astronomy things, but he's very good at astronomical sketching. And you can see, I just think these pictures are amazing. This one on the left is so detailed. You can look at the rim here, and there's shadow going that way and that way. And it's, obviously very notched and jagged. And this is the straight wall with sunrise and sunset. I think it's very impressive. He's got some really expensive gear, but also he's just got a lot of talent. So,
Who's using pastels?
I think he's using black paper with white pastel shade. I think so. He's also told me he reversed them. Sometimes he draws it on white paper with black, graphite, and then reverses it in Photoshop sometimes. But I think this is with pastels. But he takes, some of these sketches going back to being fast. Some of these aren't so fast. I think some of these takes a couple of hours to do these. He's got some big scopes up to about, I think, 16, 18, 20 inches. And then he's got I think he's got a 9-inch Mac. So he's not just sitting there for a long time through the night sketching, but good results. So, so in summary, I think sketching is, really easy to do. I think we should give it a try. It's basically free, or at the very least cheap. And the more you sketch and the more you look, the more you're going to see. And then it also preserves kind of a record of your observing experience, shows you what you see over time, what you may have missed before, whether that be your abilities or the conditions. So and you can kind of watch your progress over time. That's kind of everything I have. Anyone have questions? I'm happy to entertain. Yes, sir.
How often or how much time you spend looking at an object that you are sketching?
So these sketches, like of these landing sites, are probably about 30 minutes to an hour each.
So you're spending 3 hours?
30 minutes to 1 hour.
30, and with that time frame, you do several sketches?
Yeah, each of these pictures here is probably 30 minutes. Let's just say 1 hour. So 1 hour of looking at it and drawing at the same time.
Do you have a chance to photograph what you are sketching?
I leave that to everyone else in the club. I think I'm the only visual guy left. So no. All right, good.
But it would be interesting to get a photograph, even if someone else did it for the object you're looking at, and work on your sketch post the observation to improve your skill.
That's true, I guess. Yeah, there are a lot of things online. If you look for a particular crater, like especially a popular one like Clavius, you can see a lot of pictures online, and you can match. You can practice doing that and then draw it in real life, and then see what you missed. It's not a bad idea at all. Yeah.
How are you attempting to keep yourself in scale, Paul? Like walking your hand over and wherever the pencil falls. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
So the first thing I do is try to draw the biggest features, the largest craters, and then put them in place, like on this one where you're watching the Perry crater over time. Put the biggest piece of the puzzle in place first to make sure those dimensions are correct, so they're always the same spacing, and then start filling the gaps with the smaller features. But yeah, the biggest craters are always the ones I put in first, and that kind of gives me a scale. I'm measuring mentally with my eyes. Okay, that's so big on paper. How many crater widths is it to the next crater? And that's a hard skill to get, because if you screw that up, then it's all out of whack. And some of mine definitely are out of whack. If you looked at it compared to, again, a picture, you would see some of them kind of a little wonky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So you started sketching some other things like star cluster or deep sky object nebula.
Yeah, so I guess one thing I should have said at the beginning, lunar sketching is really nice because you can leave the porch lights on and have a full bright light where you're drawing. It's much easier, and solar is easy too. I've done a lot of solar. I sketch solar every time I pull out my solar scope. Deep sky objects, comets, are obnoxious because they're hard to see anyway. And then you have a red light in your face and you're trying to draw, so they're difficult. I did all the open clusters for the astronomical league project. I sketched all of them, all 125. Done some of the meteor objects, but not many. And I've done some comets. So, but it's harder again because it's so much. You turn on that red light, and it's not supposed to hurt your eyes, but it does. You either can't see in the eyepiece, or you can't see in the paper. It's one of the two, and it's difficult, at least for me. So the moon's a good place to start because you can get away with lots of light.
The other big sketcher I know of
Yeah.
First round, it gave back then. Said, "Oh well, thank you for the way." I don't know.
There's
I ain't on the mind if I would put all that effort. I think you still can.
he was here sketching a month or so ago. Yeah, that's why I like to digitize mine, and there's nothing to keep up with. There is some detail loss, but again, that's just again part of I don't like clutter, so can't keep it forever. So I did see when I turned in my Eclipse project last month, I got an email back from the coordinator, and he has a website showing he's sketching all the NGC objects, all 8,000 or whatever it is of them. There were some that were duplicates off from the original system, and there were some that he'd sketched already. I think it was 6,000 he was left with. He's going to do it over 4 years, and he had done 4,000 of the 6,000. So he's going to make it, and that's impressive, very impressive. Yeah, he's been his website. Yeah, I don't know his name. Yeah, he's from Oklahoma. Yeah. Any other questions? Guys, I appreciate your time. You give it a try. Like I said, the worst you can do is throw away your sketch at the end of the day, but it's fun to give it a try. So. You switch over there.
Sounds fine.
No, you're fine.
Switch with it.
How do you slice it? Depending on the C squared. So that I just draw. I got 20 starters. 38 plus the object.
Hey guys, I want to make one announcement while we're waiting. National Astronomy Day is next week. Next weekend, Saturday. And I need all the help we can get. We've got a solar cooker we need a volunteer for. And a whole bunch of other stuff we're gonna be doing. Air rockets, balloon rockets, bubbles, solar viewing, solar marshmallow cooking.
Greeters.
Huh?
Even greeters, just.
And greeters, we need greeters to tell people, what we're doing, where we're at, everything about it. So if y'all can make it, please make it. It's 2 o'clock, or 10 o'clock, or 10:30,
10:30.
and it's at it's the old visitor center at Pinnacle. It's now the Riverview Center. Saturday night. Saturday afternoon from 2 o'clock on. And then I think about 5:30 to 7, we're gonna have dinner break.
And we're gonna have pizza.
Okay.
So there you just get Zippy like you RSVP here.
Okay.
We'll open that up, I guess tomorrow.
Okay.
So you can order your third or big pizza.
Or you could bring a picnic lunch or dinner.
Yeah.
And then you won't. Thank you.
Carl, I was just going to talk about sketching just a little bit. First of all, Thomas Baskins had a contest here about 1990 for the best sketch, and I sketched Saturn for my first sketch. I saw things I'd never, I looked at it for years through telescopes, but I saw so much more by sketching than I ever did without. And before we sent rockets around the moon to take close-up pictures of the moon, you could get more detail from sketching than you could from photography, because the photography from Earth always had a lot of shaking and stuff like bad seeing. Yeah, I mean, when you take a photograph, you have to have seeing for the whole time. But when you're looking at it, you might just get 1 second of good seeing, and you might see stuff and you can sketch it in when you see it. So anyway, before the advent of rocket sketching was the best. So here's Galileo's sketch, first sketch of the moon through his telescope. And I think the big crater must be Clavius, because Clavius is near the thing. But I recognize the seeds there. That's Tritium up top, Serenitatis, Tranquillitatis, Fecunditatis, and Nectars. But I recognize them. That's about it. That's all I recognize from his sketch. But astronomers, especially here, as long as I've been here, have had a hate relationship with the moon, and because they love deep sky, and so they don't like it when the moon's up. But the moon's a wonderful thing to observe, and a lot of them are planning on observing it this next few months. So the astrolabe, it's up there, but it's not here. Oh, does it? Okay. There we go. Okay, the Lunar Observing Program is a program to get you acquainted with the moon, and it's about one of the easiest programs and one of the most fun. It's the very first one I did back a long time ago. But to start off, you look at the naked eye moon, and some things you can do with the naked eye moon are first of all, notice the phases, watch them change from night to night. Like Karl made 3 pictures there with the different phases. Well, Boy Scouts have to do that too. That's one of their requirements, is to do 4 sketches over a week's time to show the different phase changes. and how it's changing through the stars. So that's your movement night to night. And then naked eye, you can also see the dark patches and the white light patches, can't you? So, and a lot of people see the man in the moon looking at it naked eye. I have a compass up there to kind of start orienting you for the moon. But the sun rises on the eastern side of the moon. So tonight, when we see the little crescent moon, that'll be the eastern side of the moon. And you see the long, skinny there, or C right there. That's Mare Fragrantis, and that's the northern part of the moon. So that's how I remember. And most time I don't think much about the orientation of the moon, but I just thought I'd throw that in on this slide. See if we can get to the next slide.
Rocky, tell us about the forest.
I've got slides on that. Oh well. Okay, just some basics about the moon. Of course, it rises in the east and sets in the west. It moves about 15 degrees a day, so it takes about 30 days for it to go all around 360 degrees. So 15 into 360, I think, must be 360. And it rises about 50 minutes later each day. So if you see the moon rising one night, and you want to go out the next night and look at stars, you can count on an hour, about 50 minutes longer of dark skies, but about 50 minutes longer each night. Of course, most of you know the same side of the moon always faces the Earth, so we are tidally locked to the moon. We can actually see about 59% of the moon, just the way it moves about in space and the position we're in. That's called libration. Talk a little bit more about that. The lunar month is 29.53 days from new moon to new moon. There's a synodic month that is how long it takes for the moon to go from a position in the sky and come back to that same position. I think it's 27.3 or something like that, but it's kind of irrelevant. I think it's because what's important is the phases of the moon. It's about 240,000 miles from Earth, but it's in an elliptical orbit. So sometimes it's closer to the Earth, and sometimes it's farther away. When it's closest to the Earth is when we have if you have a total eclipse, or an eclipse, then it covers it like it did here, and we were not very. I looked it up, but less than a day away from the perigee, which is when it's close. When it's farthest away, that's when you get an annular eclipse, like some of you went to in Texas last year. It's about a quarter the size of the Earth, 2,155 miles, and the Earth's about 8,000, right around 8,000 miles in diameter. And it. Uh-huh. Yeah.
You said there's a difference between the lunar month, two different types. I was trying to think about, would that impact, like if you had a full moon, does a full moon rise approximately the same time every month, or is that where you get that disconnect?
No, you get the disconnect because the Earth's moving around the sun in its orbit. So the position of those stars where it was at last month okay, here's the stars here and the earth was here. Well, next month the earth's over here. That star is still over here. So the moon is not gonna the moon hasn't made its all the way around. It's not a new moon yet.
So you can have a full moon rise at any time of day or night. Is that what I'm saying? It's not a day, it's the sun. It's the sun. Up around
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think about, like, as I talk to people about this. Well,
I wouldn't worry about that. I wouldn't worry about the synodic month.
I
Because
know-
the important one is the phases of the moon and the whole month, and that's the way that's what's used in calendars. You know,
yeah, I'm just trying to think, if you wanted to see a full moon, is it always gonna be, when it's opposite, the sun is gonna set, the moon's gonna rise, so it's right.
Yeah,
about
it's-
to set.
yeah, and
I was
yeah.
gonna say, and so you could probably think about, about what time you're gonna watch a full moon rise, what time, and where.
Well, you can look that up. Yeah.
Right.
You know, I use Stellarium for that all the time. Stellarium's great for that. So first, what I like to recommend is to learn your way around the moon with binoculars, and and to memorize some of the Maria, because they're the easiest things to see. And basically, when you memorize some of the Maria, like I said a minute ago, Fecunditatis, Tranquillitatis, Serenitatis, and Merecrisiums, then it's fairly easy to find craters and things like that that are close to them once you know that. And for binoculars, here's what I recommend is either I like 8x42. They're really good. But I have a 10x52 if I want to zoom in a little bit. If you have larger binoculars, you're going to have stabilization of some kind of binocular mount, a tripod or a monopod that's got a thing on top. That works real good. A little bit easier to use than a tripod. But I also have a list. I may send that out to y'all that are in this, because it's good to know that these are the main things you see. I mentioned something I'm going to mention again are Grimaldi and Plato and Merecrisium. Those are important. Yeah, any binoculars you have, make it good. But if you're going to buy a pair, 8x42s or 10x50s, I think. Okay. Now I'm going to teach y'all. Some of y'all probably how many people see the Lady in the Moon? The ones I showed before, I bet. Yeah. Okay, so and that's how I like to teach learn these 6 items. They're all in the Lady in the Moon. Okay, now do y'all see the Lady in the Moon? And see, Tycho's her brooch, and Christium's the knot on the top of her hair. He hadn't got it drawn that way. But that's how I always think of Christium. So now now every time you see a picture of the moon, you'll see this Lady in the Moon. Okay, so now on the lunar features, of course, these dark areas, the people who first observed the moon thought they were seas. They were equating it to Earth. So that's why they're called Maria, because that's Latin for sea. And that's the darkest parts of the lunar landscape. And the reason they're dark is because they're lava. And these are huge basins. Most of these Maria were huge objects that struck the moon and made an impression. And then, like I said, the Earth was tidally locked to the moon. So it pulled the lava out towards the Earth. And the reason I say that is because Russia flew around the moon for the first time in 1959 and gave us a picture of the backside of the moon. And there's no Maria on the back. There's none of these on the backside of the moon. And that's because it all came to this side of the moon. So the dark side of it's not the dark side of the moon, but the back of the moon is totally different than the front side. And it's mostly basalt rock, which I think is lava. So I'm gonna. Okay, and another feature is craters, and there's huge craters. Well, they say up to 1553, but that's I think on the backside of the moon, and it would be a Mary if it was filled. But Clavius is one of the biggest, like the third biggest that we can see on the moon, and maybe the second biggest on this side. And I'll show a little more on that in a minute. Most are formed by meteorite impact on the moon. Some are formed by volcanic action inside the moon. But almost all of them are meteors that struck the moon. And here's three types of craters. One is a simple crater that was maybe not very big, and it just made a hole in the ground. The second would have been a much bigger object that actually, after it hit, it actually rebounded from the inside and formed mountains, like mountains in the middle. So that came from the reaction to the asteroid or whatever it was that hit. The rebound, and you can see some of the other details. It's got a scarp on the outside where materials fell down, and then a lot of times it'll have terraces. And then you've got a crater like this, which might be an older crater that was formed before this other one, and it was filled with lava, like the mares. So, and it would have a flat floor. And those few meteorites are some that came in after it was filled with lava. Okay, and there's some nice mountain ranges on the moon. Most of them are most of the best ones are associated with Mare Crisium. Mare Imbrium. Need a drink. It made a huge impact, and you can see where it pushed mountains up, especially to the western side. Another impact probably pushed up these Montes Jura that formed. That's a sinus iridium right there. But the mountain ranges are named after mountain ranges on Earth, so we recognize the names. That's why. But they were formed from the formation of the Mare, or the basin that the Mare became. And then you've got lunar rays, and this is Tycho that y'all have seen sketches of. And it's got the most extensive ray system on the moon. And they're best visible in high sun, like Tycho in this photo. And then we've got some other features, like rills, and Karl had a sketch of the Apollo 15 site. This is the Apollo 15 site, and you can see how it landed down in the mountains like that. That's pretty fascinating to me. Their first one was on Mare Tranquillitatis, and they chose it because it was flat, it didn't have a lot of obstacles, and they missed their landing site by about 4 kilometers. You couldn't have missed it by that much on this. But anyway, this was the first one with a lunar rope, and this is a rill. And what a rill is, and I don't think they knew what they were before Apollo went up. It's where like a river of lava flowed through there back when the moon was in the lava stages. So that's what the rills are old lava flows. And that's just a fascinating area right there through a good telescope. And then you have wrinkle ridges. This is called sinus astum over here. That's Aristophanes, but you see these ridges here are they kind of look like waves going up on a seashore. And a lot of the mares, and that's where lava actually flowed up that way and froze that way. Domes. And they're not something you do in Lunar 1, but if you do Lunar 2, I think you do some domes. But they're very interesting. We used to have a guy in the club by the name of Harry Jameson, and he had a 10-inch cave from the late 1950s, and that thing the mount probably weighed 75 or 80 pounds, and he had a little bitty car with a hatchback, and he would haul it up here, and I'd ride with him. He lived in Heber Springs, but he did a lot of research on these domes. And if you look up domes, you'll find some research that he did. And what they did was they measure them by knowing what the angle of the sun was, and they get a shadow on the back side. They'd measure that shadow, and they'd be able to tell the height of the dome. What they were looking for was volcanic action to where the dome was growing or whatever. Okay, and we also saw Rufus recta, the straight wall. And that's called a scarp. That's another feature on the moon. And something he had two sketches there that he showed, one from one direction, one from the other direction. So you had to get up early morning to see that second. There wasn't any way out of that. Seeing young and old moons, and we looked about that. I sent out a thing on it, but you need to have a good eastern or western horizon. So scope out an area where you can find that. Get there before time to see it. Take a pair of binoculars. You can use an app to kind of find the location of the moon if you don't see it when you first get there. And if you got Venus or Mercury up, it also makes it easier because if you see it, then you can find the moon kind of at an angle down below it. But I got this picture about 4 years ago, almost exactly. But here's a 1.3 day old moon, and there's Venus, and there's Mercury.
But Rocky, what's the earliest someone's actually seen the moon?
I think it's like 12 or 13 hours. That's pretty fascinating. I think I saw a 19-hour one time. I was doing an early morning bicycle ride, 6 a.m., and caught the moon and went home and looked it up. If I remember right, it was 19 hours, but that was a long time. And that's pretty impressive to do that. And there's certain times a year where the moon is straight up above the horizon instead of at an angle. So those are the best times of year. And I can't tell you right now. I think it's probably summer and midsummer and midwinter.
So ask the question, when we watch the eclipse, is that the equivalent of moon to moon? If you could see it going from old to new?
Yeah, that's the period of time. That's zero.
Yeah, so I mean, other than there's two kind of things. One is we could all say if we saw the eclipse, we saw the brand spanking the oldest and the new.
Yeah, on one side it was the old moon, on the other side it was the new moon.
But then there's the other kind of chasing without.
I have an app I really like. I may have mentioned it.
Of course, you really don't see it.
No.
Moon phase calculator is real nice. But if you know the time of the new moon, then you can calculate how old your moon is. And that's what we're talking about, the 48 hours and 72 hours. So here's some different software. Virtual Moon is a good program. It's got a lot of information on it, and it's got a lot of historical information. And you can print out different times of the month and stuff like that. Lunar Map HD is great for your phone. It doesn't show the dark and the light. It's got a line to terminate. But it's pretty accurate. Sometimes Virtual Moon is a little bit off, it seems like. Another one I use is that, a lunar phase thing. And I use stellarium a lot too. Okay, so an observing plan, start by becoming familiar with the moon. You know, memorize a few things like some of the dark mares and some of the prominent craters. Observe it with binoculars or a small scope. Start with the lunar cycle about 3 days old, which is about what we've got now. Yesterday was 3 days. And map out the craters near the terminator with virtual moon or lunar HD. And those are the ones to look at right now. Those are the ones you're going to see the greatest detail on, because if you remember, if you're out in the late afternoon as the sun's setting, you ever noticed your shadows are real long? That's what happens on the moon. The shadows are real long near the terminator. And so you can see a lot more detail. And there's almost no detail over where the sun is straight up. But you can repeat it every night the moon's out. If it's not cloudy, you can go out and do that again. And I've done that a couple of times. One time I went through it the whole month, observed it every night. That was something David Levy in his book recommended to do. And that's kind of where I got it. And these are the 3 pins you can earn for lunar. That's lunar 1's up in the left, lunar 2, and lunar evolution. And lunar 1 has naked eye, binocular, and telescope observations, and you can get a certificate for binocular without doing the telescope, and then you get a pin and a certificate for the telescope. But if you're doing, there's actually a binocular award where if you do 8 binocular programs, you get a binocular award, master binocular. No stark skies needed. A small scope is all that's required. I did a lot of it with 80 millimeter scope on a bad tripod, but you can see a lot with that. You will learn many things going through this program. Okay, I've got another one. Talks a little bit more about the moon. Are there any questions about that? That worked, because I could look at it that way. So we didn't know very much about the moon until the space program. And there were all kinds of theories about how the moon was formed. And we just didn't know a lot about it. But the space program really, they brought back a lot of rocks from different areas. Every Apollo mission had certain objectives, and that's why it landed in the area it did, to get certain rocks from certain parts of the moon. Sorry, I don't know. What'd you do? Oh, okay. I thought it didn't. Okay, this is just them on the moon with showing the lunar rover, Apollo 17. And you remember I showed you how deep a valley they went into for Apollo 15? This was even deeper. This was really something getting down where they were. But they collected rocks from like 2 or 3 different stratas when they landed it here at Apollo 17. And what they think from the Apollo, and there were a lot of different theories as to how the moon was formed. And there's a lot of rocks on the moon that are like rocks on Earth. So they found out that they think this is how it happened now. That a Mars-sized planetesimal, and they called it Thea, crashed into the Earth, and then it just formed something, and may have even looked like Saturn at one time with all the debris coming out. Then that debris gradually formed into the moon. So that's the impact theory. So that's the theory that they've got going right now, that they've had since probably the 70s or early 80s. And this lends it to itself because the Earth is actually at a 23.5 degree tilt, which is why we have seasons. And so that impact theory lends to this right here, that the Earth is tilted away from the equatorial plane. Also, the moon has a 5 degree tilt from the equatorial plane, which makes it every month it's different. It comes around in a different place. And if you observe the same object from month to month, it'll have a different solar angle on that object, and you might see different details from month to month. So these are the geological eras that they think the moon is formed with. It was formed about 4.5 billion years ago, and that's about the same figure they give for the Earth being formed. I'm going to step through these. I'm not going to go through all of them right now. And the pre-Nectarian era, the first era, is when the lunar crust was formed, about that 4.5, 4.6 billion years ago, and ends with a large impact that created the Nectaris Basin 3.92 billion years ago. And by looking at craters, you can kind of figure out what era they may have been born in or created in. Like this is Grimaldi, which is near the edge of the moon, and you can see how the edges of it are beaten down. That's from meteor impacts and small impacts and stuff like that, beaten down, and that's the pre-Nectarian. And this crater's been filled with lava. It's very visible with a pair of binoculars. Small crater, but you can see it with a pair of binoculars easy. And Hevelius is a Nectarian crater, and you can see it's got a little bit better walls than this. And then Calaverius is a much younger crater, and it's not beaten down. It's still got nice walls. But Grimaldi is a dark lava-filled crater, and you can see it right here on the edge of the moon. It's used to, I was telling you about libration. We can actually see 59% of the moon. So this crater will be, if you look at this crater, and you can mostly see it after full moon because it's on this side of the moon, but it'll be different distances from the edge of the moon. So you can kind of tell what stage of libration you're in by looking at that crater. Tranquillitatis is a mare. Of course, that's where Apollo 11 landed, and you can see the edges are real broken down, and it doesn't have a defined edge. Where this one is a younger crater, younger sea, and it's still got defined edges. So that's kind of how you can tell the age of a crater. Mare Nectaris that it's named for is one of the craters in the Lady in the Moon, the northernmost crater. I mean northernmost sea. And you had a photo of this. You had a draw. This is my sketch for Lunar 2 a long time ago, of Fracatosius, which is a really neat crater. If you're looking at Marinette Taurus, it's just a really a neat crater. It's been broken. The walls have been partially broken down. Okay, another crater I mentioned earlier was Clavius, and it's a big crater on the kind of almost in the middle of the moon, and you can actually see it. That's the only crater you can see naked eye. When the sun's right, it'll be a dark spot it'll be a chunk out of the side of the side of the moon. There's some sketches of it, and you can see all the craters inside it that have, and it's still got some mountains too. And this is a Merecrisium, which is the youngest. And you see it doesn't have a lot of craters in it. And that's one we'll see tonight. That's the very first thing that's pretty much visible when you've got a 2 or 3 day old moon. And then we talked a little bit about Mare Imbrium, which is the Imbrian era from 3.85 to the Nectarian era was when most of the big basins were formed that we see as mares now. Then in the Imbrian era, they were filled with lava. That's when they were filled with lava. And they say it ended with the Aristothian crater impact 3.15 million years ago. And you can see a lot of wrinkle ridges here in Mare Imbrium. That's a neat area. Oh, I meant to point this out too. This is Plato, and it's another very easily visible crater in binoculars because it's dark with a white background because it's dark fill. They use you can kind of use Plato and Merecrisium to look at your libration also. Yeah, this was Plato. Easy binocular object. And this is the Alpine Valley right here in the in the Alps. This is the Alps on the moon. And that's the Alpine Valley, and that's the best valley on the moon. There's another one or two. They're not spectacular. That's where supposedly an object came through and just made a furrow. So at the start, what it's saying it is that they kind of measured this. The start of this is how long it takes when you have something strike the moon. It kicks out dirt, okay, or rocks and objects, and they're normally white. Have a lot lower albedo or higher albedo than the natural moon. That's where the rays come from, and this is about the time that the 3.15 to 1.1 where those rays kind of go away because of little meteor impacts and other things that happen. And here's the Eratosthenes crater, which is a very nice crater through the moon. And that's a lunar reconnaissance photograph and Erica Rick's raw sketch. Then the last era is the Copernican era, 1.1 billion years ago to present. Y'all think getting this billion years ago? So most of the time, you can tell things in the Copernican era by their white. They've got they look at white spots on the moon. So that's kind of what signifies the Copernican era. Copernicus is about 800 million years old. Tycho, which has rays reaching around the moon, is about 108 million years ago. Aristarchus, which is about the brightest spot on the moon, is 450 million years old. And so here's Tycho, and you can see you look at instead of looking at features, look at the white spots. Those are young craters and young features. And the dark spots is where lava flowed. But but Tycho, and there's Copernicus, and you can see the flayed out right there. And there's not a big ray system with Aristarchus, but it's supposedly the brightest spot on the moon. And you're supposed to. I've heard and I've tried to see it, but I hadn't been able to. That when you got like the new moon and the old moon's arms or whatever, that you can see it. You can catch it on the backside of the moon with your telescope. Right? Okay, this is a Copernicus by John Herschel, and then another photo of Copernicus. And it's pretty spectacular through a scope when it's on the Terminator. And here's Tycho. Then y'all see the lady in the moon. Okay. And here's Tycho. A sketch of Tycho. Okay, here's the rabbit's ears. Here's his two legs. Here's his nose. Here's his cottontail. Here's his back legs.
Rabbits upside down, Chinese.
I don't know.
Where's the man?
I've never. Well, you kind of when you're just looking at a full moon, that's when you can see the man. And there's also a cow jumping over the moon. You're supposed to find all four of those for lunar one. And this is Aristarchus, and Aristarchus is a great place to sketch. It's got a lot of reels and a lot of features like that. Tried sketching. I just wanted to go through that, show y'all give y'all a little more context when you're looking at features on the moon. Maybe think about, hey, that's an old feature, that's a new feature. That's all I've got. Thank you, Rocky.
Okay, you take any questions?
Yeah.
Where does the lava come from?
Well, it's just like the Earth's got lava inside the Earth. The moon had lava inside the moon.
It has a core like Earth?
I'm not sure how much of a core it's got right now, but it had a core. Like
So the lava is not formed during impact?
well, I mean, you got a ball of liquid to start with, don't you? And it starts forming a crust on the outside, and then as it cools off, it gets deeper, and the crust gets deeper and deeper, and you still got lava on the inside. But in this case, we had the Earth, since it was locked to the moon. One side of the moon was locked to the Earth. Earth had gravity continually pulling on the lava, so in this direction. Any other questions?
How tall are the edge of these newer craters? Any idea how tall they are? Is it like a mountain? Is it like a?
Some of the mountains are like 7,000 or 8,000. 7,000. So that's what, about 15,000 feet. Not as tall as the Earth. Pretty tall. Well, yeah, 7,000 meters. Oh, yeah. You're right.
Rocky, one point of reference, on Copernicus, the central peaks, the rebound peaks, are about 3 times taller than Pinnacle Mountain,
Oh, okay.
but with your perspective.
Alan has made and 3D printed some Copernicus craters, and it's amazing how shallow it is. Shallow.
Was disappointed to learn, because when you look at the moon through the eyepiece, it looks like it's so rugged and they're so steep. I read recently that the hills and mountains actually aren't as steep as you think. They look steeper from Earth than they really are. They're much more gentle slope.
Yeah. Yeah, he made some 3D craters that showed the action. It was pretty stark, like you're saying. It's kind of surprising.
Rocky, was it you that had sent out a picture of the moon, and I think Arkansas was overlaid over one of the craters to show relative size, and
The moon is actually not that big when you overlay Arkansas over,
I don't remember.
okay.
I don't remember that. I might have. Okay, no more questions?
That was great.
Thank you. We got maps to pass out for some, don't we?
Anybody not
Maps.
have signed in yet?
Jim got the maps. They were in there. Jim Dixon. So we need to pass out.
All right, thank you for those presentations. And before we end the meeting tonight, does anyone have any new business they'd like to bring before the club? One little thing. I know who's lieutenant is. Anybody know what this is? Buddy? Buddy? And does anybody claim this? And, how about this? All right, we're going down. Right, some of the, take it if you want it. Put a little donation in the round box. Take it. Thanks. All right. I just want to reemphasize what Bill told us earlier. One of the best ways that we get public exposure are through our star parties and then the big day, astronomy day, which brings more people in. We did it one year here and it was just so many people. We decided we need a bigger platform for this. So please, we need people to help. You don't have to know every crater on the moon like Rocky does, but you can help by helping people say, well, there, that telescope is seeing the moon. That telescope is seeing this. This is where you go to learn this talk. So please really need the help, because if you don't have enough people, everyone's stretched too thinly and we're running all over the place. All right. Well, thank you very much. I close this meeting and, oh, yes.
I wanted to say that 20 Starlinks will go by tonight at 8:30, 8:38, go right through the Hamlet Big Dipper. If you haven't seen a Starlink run up, this is only 20, not 49. And
Sure.
the ISS goes over at 9:58. Here's that at 8:38. So
Is there any way we can shoot them down?
Yeah. that's what I was gonna say.
I really hate those things. I'm taking an image and all of a sudden, right through it. It's horrible.
One more thing, look in the clubhouse around the walls are a bunch of stuff that we got from the state capitol. We're gonna have to decide what to do with it. Everybody.
Those displays.
Looks great.
And then if you want to hang around, if it clears up, we might see some northern lights. We may not. So if we're lucky, I don't think we'll get anything as good as we got last night, but
Well, look at
maybe
the moon.
we're going to look at the moon too, if it's clear. Yeah, but I'm just saying. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone.